Also in Copenhagen, covering the climate summit, is New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman, author of the must-read Hot, Flat, and Crowded. Tom, good morning.
Good morning, Harry.
Last time President Obama was in Denmark, he was trying to ride to the rescue of the Olympic bid for Chicago. He is there again. Is there any chance he can resurrect these climate talks?
Well, you know, these conferences, Harry, they always come down to the end. They always wait for the senior leaders to arrive and make the big compromises. But in this case, I'm just not sure if a deal is really possible. You know, there's a lot of circles here, and there's circles within circles. But the circle that's in the middle of the whole thing has the United States and China. And these two powers, very wary of each other, each is desperate not to have a deal here that will give strategic and economic advantage to the other.
Right.
That's what this is really about.
Because
and whether they can get a compromise, I'm not sure.
Right, because the issue with China is China says, well, in principle, we're ready to kind of go along with this, but we don't want you sticking your nose in our business, this whole business of transparency. Is that what it's really about?
Yeah, the Chinese are basically saying, we promise not to go over the speed limit. You know, we promise only 40 miles an hour, but we want no police, no courts, no stoplights, no real transparency on their carbon emissions. And the United States is saying, and President Obama is saying, if you think I can get that through the U.S. Congress, that China promises to be good on carbon, well, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you.
Speaking of bridges, and one that may be also difficult to sell, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was in Copenhagen yesterday and promised that the United States would come up with at least $100 billion to help poorer countries. Does anybody really know that that money is there and that the United States can back up that pledge?
Well, that's also, I think, took a lot of people by surprise here. Actually, if you read what the Secretary said, it was, we will work to get $100 billion from the public and private sector. But what she was basically trying to do was build leverage on the Chinese by holding that carrot out to the developing world. She basically said to the developing world, we will get $100 billion for you if you can convince the Chinese to agree to the deal we want. Whether she could actually deliver the $100 billion is a whole nother question.
Press Secretary Robert Gibbs yesterday said it's better to come back empty-handed than come back with an empty agreement. Would you go along with that?
Oh, I absolutely would, Harry, because, you know, while I think you could end up with bad news out of Copenhagen, the good news is that countries all over the world have really started what I like to call the Earth race. You know, we had a space race back in the 60s. Who could be the first to put a man on the moon? Only 2 countries involved, only 1 winner. What we have now, and I think the real hope, is the Earth race. Who can build the most clean technologies so men and women can stay here on Earth? And that's a race that many countries can win. In fact, we all have to win together. And my focus and my aspiration is the United States would take the lead in that, and I think many more countries would actually follow us than will ever do so under the compulsion of any treaty.
Tom Friedman, thank you so much for your insight this morning. We do appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks, Harry.
All right, great to see you.